My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my happiest day became the most painful memory of my life. It was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter. The day I celebrated love with the people who were supposed to care about me the most. Instead, it turned into a day of betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. What happened still echoes inside me, and though it hurts to relive, I need to share it. Maybe someone out there will understand. I grew up believing that family meant everything. I was raised to think that no matter what happened, no matter how many fights or disagreements, blood was unbreakable. My parents always told me that family came first, that loyalty was what kept us together. And I lived my entire life clinging to that belief. I was the kind of daughter who always tried to make them proud, who never rebelled too much, who did everything I could to bring them joy. But the truth is, deep down, I always felt like I had to fight harder than my siblings for love and recognition. I was the eldest, so my parents treated me with higher expectations. If I brought home good grades, my mother would smile faintly and say, "Well, that's what we expect from you, Sarah." If my younger sister, Emily, brought home the same grades, my parents would bake a cake and throw a little celebration. If my younger brother, Luke, scored a goal in soccer, the whole family would be cheering at the dinner table. But when I won an award in school, the most I ever got was a nod. It didn't take long for me to learn to hide my disappointment. I told myself that maybe they loved me differently, that maybe being the oldest just came with higher standards. I buried the pain and kept smiling because I didn't want anyone to think I was bitter. Life went on. And when I left for college, I thought maybe things would change. That's when I met someone who changed my world, the love of my life, David. I still remember the first day we met. I was in the campus library, trying to finish an essay, when he accidentally spilled his coffee near my notes. His face turned pale as he apologized over and over, fumbling for napkins, looking completely mortified. Instead of getting angry, I laughed, because something about him just disarmed me. That awkward accident turned into a conversation that lasted hours. We talked about everything, our dreams, our fears, our families, the things we wanted to accomplish. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone was actually seeing me, really listening to me, not just nodding or brushing me aside. As weeks turned into months, we grew closer. David wasn't just my boyfriend, he became my best friend, my confidant, the person I trusted more than anyone else. He encouraged me when I doubted myself, he celebrated even my smallest victories. And he made me feel like I mattered in ways my family never had. The first time he brought me to his home, I was stunned. His parents welcomed me with warmth I wasn't used to. They asked me questions about my life, they laughed at my jokes, and they celebrated my achievements as if I were already part of the family. I didn't realize until that moment how much I had been craving that kind of acceptance. It felt like stepping into a different world, one filled with unconditional love and genuine support. But when the time came for me to introduce David to my family, it was completely different. My mother gave him a polite smile, but later, she pulled me aside and said, "He doesn't really seem like our kind of people." My father barely spoke to him at all, and when he did, it was about small, meaningless things like the weather or traffic. Emily and Luke didn't say anything rude, but they didn't try to connect with him either. It was like they had already decided to keep him at a distance. At first, I thought they just needed time. David was patient, he kept showing kindness, no matter how cold they seemed. But as months passed, nothing changed. My mother would make subtle comments, asking if I was really sure about him. Emily once said to me, "You could do better, you know. He's nice, but he's not really a fit for us." Even Luke, who usually never cared about anything serious, once smirked and said, "I don't see this lasting too long." Their disapproval stung, but I chose to ignore it. I loved David, and I wasn't going to let their indifference ruin what we had. Deep down, I still believed that when the wedding day came, everything would be different. I thought they would put aside their doubts and stand by me when it mattered most. After 2 years together, David proposed to me. He did it in the most beautiful, meaningful way, not extravagant, not showy, but so perfectly us. He took me back to the library where we first met. A corner of the room was decorated with fairy lights and pictures of us together. When he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him, my heart nearly burst. I said yes, with tears in my eyes, and for a moment, everything felt like a dream. When I shared the news with my family, I expected at least a spark of excitement. Instead, their reactions left me cold. My mother said, "Well, if you're sure, This is what you want." My father muttered something about how weddings were expensive. Emily smirked and said, "Wow, you really went through with it, huh?" Luke just shrugged. That was it. No hugs, no tears of joy, no sense of celebration. It was as if I had told them I'd bought a new pair of shoes. Still, I held on to hope. I told myself that maybe the wedding itself would change things. Maybe when they saw me in my dress, when they watched me walk down the aisle, they'd finally realize how much David meant to me. I imagined them crying happy tears, clapping with joy, and embracing us both. Planning the wedding was a dream for me, mostly because David's family poured their hearts into it. His parents were there for every detail, the flowers, the venue, the food. They wanted it to be special, and they made me feel like I wasn't just marrying David, but marrying into a family who cared. Meanwhile, my own family was nowhere to be found. Whenever I asked my mom if she wanted to help, she'd say she was busy with church activities. My dad claimed work was too demanding. Emily dismissed it all as wedding drama, and Luke acted like he couldn't care less. It hurt more than I admitted. Sarah, David's mom, even asked me once if my parents were excited. I smiled and lied, saying they were just busy. Inside, though, I felt abandoned already. The night before the wedding, David's family hosted a small dinner. The atmosphere was filled with warmth, laughter, and love. His father raised a glass and toasted to us, saying, "To Sarah and David, may your love shine brighter with every year." The room filled with cheers, hugs, and genuine joy. And yet, a piece of me was aching. My family wasn't there. They hadn't even called. When the night ended, I stepped outside under the stars and pulled out my phone. My hands shook as I typed into the family group chat, "Big day tomorrow. I hope to see you all there." It would mean the world to me. I waited, staring at the screen, but no one replied. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart. Still, a part of me clung to hope. Maybe they were planning to surprise me. Maybe tomorrow, when I walked down the aisle, I'd see their faces after all. I didn't know then how wrong I was. The morning of my wedding, I woke up with a mixture of nerves and excitement. For a moment, as the sunlight streamed through the window, I forgot all my worries. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the day I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. I looked at my dress hanging by the door, the white fabric shimmering softly in the light. And I thought to myself, today everything will be different. Today my family will come through for me. The preparations began. Early, David's family was already buzzing around the venue, helping with decorations, checking on the caterers, arranging flowers, making sure every detail was perfect. There was so much laughter, so many warm embraces, so much genuine love in the air. I kept glancing at my phone, waiting for a message, a call, something from my parents or my siblings. Nothing came. I told myself they were probably on their way, maybe too busy getting dressed or driving to bother sending a text. Still, every time my phone stayed silent, a little piece of my hope chipped away. As I sat in the dressing room getting my makeup done, my bridesmaids tried to cheer me up. They told me how beautiful I looked, how everything was perfect, how I was about to have the best day of my life. I smiled and nodded, but inside, my heart was racing. I imagined the moment the doors would open and I would walk down the aisle. I imagined scanning the crowd and finally spotting my parents, maybe even crying with pride. That was the picture I held onto as I slipped into my dress. The ceremony was scheduled to start at 3 o'clock. Guests began arriving one by one, filling the seats with chatter and excitement. David's relatives were everywhere, hugging me, complimenting me, telling me how thrilled they were to be there. Each familiar face from his side filled me with gratitude but also deepened the emptiness of the faces I didn't see. It was now 15 minutes before the ceremony. I peeked out nervously, searching the rows of chairs. My heart sank as I realized none of my family had arrived yet. My mom's familiar hair, my dad's suit, Emily's smirk, Luke's casual grin, none of them were there. I told myself maybe they were stuck in traffic, maybe they'd walk in at the last second, flustered but smiling, ready to take their seats. The coordinator came in and whispered, "It's time." My heart pounded as the music began to play and the doors slowly opened. I took my first step forward, clutching my bouquet so tightly my knuckles turned white. My eyes scanned the crowd desperately, searching for them. Row after row, I saw strangers, friends, David's family, co-workers, neighbors, but not a single member of my own family. My throat tightened. My eyes blurred. For a second, I thought I might collapse. But then I saw David at the altar, His eyes locked on me, full of love and steadiness. I forced myself to keep walking, even though each step felt heavier than the last. The smile on my face trembled, but I didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. The ceremony went on. Words were spoken, vows were exchanged, rings were slipped onto fingers. Everyone clapped, everyone cheered, everyone celebrated, except me. On the outside, I was the glowing bride. On the inside, I was a broken daughter, abandoned by the people who were supposed to stand beside me on the most important day of my life. When the officiant announced us as husband and wife, David kissed me, and the room erupted in applause. I smiled for the cameras, I laughed for the guests, but inside, my heart screamed with one question. Why? Why didn't they come? The reception was even harder. The hall was filled with joy, dancing, and speeches from David's family and our friends. His father gave a touching toast about love and commitment. His mother welcomed me into the family with tears in her eyes. Friends told stories about our journey together. I smiled and laughed along, but every time I glanced at the empty seats reserved for my parents and siblings, the ache in my chest grew heavier. At one point, I slipped away to the bathroom. The moment the door closed behind me, I collapsed onto the counter, finally letting the tears flow. My mascara smudged, my chest heaved, and I asked myself over and over, how could they do this to me? What did I do to deserve this? A bridesmaid came in and hugged me, whispering that it didn't matter, that I had people here who loved me, that I was still beautiful, still happy, still lucky. I nodded, wiped my face, and forced myself to go back out. I danced, I laughed, I cut the cake, I posed for pictures, but the truth was, I was broken. By the end of the night, I stared at my phone again. Not a single call, not a single text, not even a message saying congratulations. It was as if my own family had erased me. That night, when David and I finally went back to our hotel room, he held me tightly as I cried into his chest. He whispered, "You don't need them, Sarah. You have me. You have us. That's all that matters." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let the warmth of his arms erase the sting of betrayal. But deep down, something was festering inside me, a mixture of anger, pain, and confusion. I needed to know why they did this. And once I found out, I swore I would never let them forget the consequences of abandoning me. The morning after my wedding, I woke up in silence. For most brides, the day after is filled with laughter, phone calls, messages from loved ones, and stories about the beautiful ceremony. For me, it was nothing like that. There were no texts from my parents, no voicemails, no congratulations from Emily or Luke. My phone, once again, was empty. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. Part of me wanted to believe there had been an emergency, some reason beyond their control. Maybe an accident, maybe an illness, something that would explain why the 4 people I had counted on most were absent. But deep down, another part of me knew the truth was uglier. David squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't think about them. Yesterday was about us. We had the people who love us there. That's all that matters." He meant well, but I couldn't let it go. I had to know why my family had chosen to break me in such a cruel way. Later that day, while David went to meet with some of his relatives, I decided to call my mother. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, and then went to voicemail. I tried my father, same thing. I called Emily, then Luke. Not one of them picked up. My stomach churned as I stared at the phone, my hands trembling. It wasn't just absence anymore. It was avoidance. Days passed. The honeymoon phase that I should have been basking in was poisoned by silence. My parents didn't reach out. My siblings didn't send a message. Nothing. It was as if they had all collectively decided to erase me. I tried again and again to reach them, but every call went unanswered. Finally, after a week of torment, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to my parents' house. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I rehearsed what I would say in my head, a mix of anger and heartbreak. When I pulled into the driveway, their cars were there. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and knocked on the door. My mother opened it. She looked surprised to see me, almost uncomfortable. "Oh, Sarah," she said flatly, like I was a stranger. "What are you doing here?" I swallowed hard. "What am I doing here? Are you serious? You didn't come to my wedding. None of you did. Not even a call. Not even a text. I need to know why." She glanced over her shoulder, then stepped aside reluctantly. My father was sitting on the couch, arms crossed. Emily was scrolling through her phone, barely glancing at me. Luke was sprawled out in a chair, smirking like this was all some kind of joke. I stood there in the middle of the living room, my heart pounding. So that's it? You all just decided I wasn't worth showing up for. I'm your daughter, your sister, how could you do that to me? Emily finally looked up and said, "You made your choice, Sarah. You chose David, and we don't support it. Why would we come to a wedding we don't believe in?" Her words cut like a knife. You don't believe in it? What does that even mean? You don't have to believe in it, it's my life, my marriage. All I asked was for you to be there. My father spoke next, his voice cold. We don't think David is the right man for you. We don't like him, we don't trust him, and we don't think this marriage will last. So no, we weren't going to waste our time pretending to be happy about something we don't support. My knees went weak. I had expected excuses, maybe a fight, maybe a misunderstanding. But not this. Not a deliberate, united decision to humiliate me. And you couldn't even call. I whispered, not even a message to say you weren't coming. You let me walk down that aisle alone, thinking maybe you'd walk in at the last second. Do you have any idea how much that broke me? My mother sighed, as if I was being dramatic. We're not going to apologize for standing by our beliefs. Sarah, if you really wanted our support, you should have listened to us. You should have chosen better. My heart cracked. Better. David loves me. He supports me. He's kind and genuine. He's everything I've ever wanted, and you couldn't even be happy for me. Luke chuckled under his breath. You'll see soon enough, Sarah. When this whole thing falls apart, don't come running back to us. I stared at him, then at Emily, then at my parents. For people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. For people who had just told me, to my face, that I wasn't worth showing up for. My chest burned with anger, but behind it was a deep, raw grief. I turned to leave, my voice shaking as I said, "You know what? You've made your choice. You chose pride, judgment, and cruelty over me. I'll remember that, and one day, you'll regret it." As I slammed the door behind me, tears blurred my vision, but beneath the heartbreak, something darker stirred. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was determination. They thought they could break me, but they were wrong. I was done begging for their love. From that day forward, I vowed that the next time they thought of me, it wouldn't be with indifference, it would be with regret.